I froze mid-step, one hand still stretched through the mango branches, the other clutching two stolen fruits like they were evidence of my downfall. "Are those mine?" A calm voice asked behind me. Not loud, not angry, just calm. But it hit harder than a shout. My heart dropped into my stomach as I slowly turned around. A man stood a few feet away, dressed too sharply for a place like this, clean white shirt, rolled sleeves, expensive watch catching the sunlight like it didn't belong in this dusty orchard. Behind him, a black SUV idled quietly near the gate, and then it clicked. He wasn't just anyone. He was the Korean CEO everyone in the town had been talking about for weeks. The one who had bought this entire mango farm and turned it into some kind of export project. The one who never smiled in photos, and I had just been caught stealing from him. My grip tightened around the mangoes. I didn't even know what to say. I can explain, I blurted out, even though I definitely couldn't. He didn't move closer, didn't call security, didn't even look angry. Instead, his eyes dropped to the mangoes in my hand. "How many did you take?" he asked quietly. That question confuses. Said me more than shouting would have. "I wasn't stealing to sell them," I said quickly, voice cracking. "My little brother hasn't eaten properly in 2 days. I was just trying to." I stopped, because saying it out loud made it sound worse. Like excuses people make in movies before they get arrested. The CEO studied me for a long moment. Then he looked past me at the broken fence near the orchard, at the empty road leading into the poorer side of town, at the heat rising from the cracked soil. "You climbed that fence?" he asked. I nodded slowly. He exhaled through his nose, like he was processing something complicated. Not anger, but calculation. Then, without warning, he walked past me. I turned, confused, as he stepped into the orchard himself. For a second, I thought he was going to call someone, or lock the gates, or take the mangoes back personally. Instead, he reached up, picked one straight from the branch, and examined it carefully. Then he did something I didn't expect. He handed it to me. "Eat," he said simply. I blinked. "What? You look like you haven't eaten either," he added, as if it was obvious. My hands didn't move. This was not how this was supposed to go. I expected yelling, cameras, guards, maybe even police. Not fruit. "I don't understand," I whispered. He finally looked at me directly. His expression wasn't soft, but it wasn't cruel either. It was something in between, like a man used to dealing with numbers, not hunger. "How old are you?" he asked. 17, I said. He nodded slightly, like he had just confirmed a fact on a document. Then he turned toward the SUV and raised a hand. The driver stepped out immediately. "Bring food," the CEO said in Korean. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the tone. It was quick, controlled, practiced. I stood there holding stolen mangoes while the owner of the entire orchard ordered food for me. It felt like reality had slipped slightly sideways. Within minutes, a small box was placed on a nearby wooden crate. Bread, rice, eggs, water. More food than I had seen at one time in weeks. My throat tightened. "This is for me?" I asked, still suspicious, like there had to be a catch. He nodded. "Eat first, then we talk. That word made my stomach twist again. I sat down slowly, like my body didn't trust the situation. I opened the box, hands side by side. King more than I wanted to admit. I hadn't realized how hungry I was until the first bite hit me. My hands moved faster after that, like my body had taken over. The CEO stood a few feet away, watching, not judging, just observing. It made me uncomfortable in a different way. When I finally slowed down, he spoke again. "You said your brother is sick?" I nodded, wiping my mouth quickly. "He's weak, fever, no money for medicine." He looked toward the road again, as if measuring distances only he understood. Then he asked, "Where is your home?" I hesitated. People like him didn't usually ask that question unless something bad came after. "Still," I pointed. He followed my finger toward the cluster of broken houses beyond the fields. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then he said something that didn't make sense at first. "Take more mangoes." I blinked. "What?" He gestured toward the trees. "Not stealing. Take as much as you need." My brain struggled to process it. I can't just. You already did," he said, cutting me off, not harshly but firmly. That shut me up. He walked a few steps deeper into the orchard again, then turned slightly, like he was thinking out loud. "This land produces more than my country needs. he said. But I was told to focus on export, profit, efficiency. He paused, then added, quieter. No one told me people outside were starving next to it. Something in his voice shifted on that last sentence. Not emotion exactly, but awareness. I didn't know what to say to that. A CEO, a billionaire, probably, standing in a mango orchard talking about starvation like it was a new concept. A worker ran up to him from the SUV, speaking quickly in Korean, showing something on a tablet. He nodded once, then turned back to me. "You'll come with me," he said. My body went cold again. "Where?" "To your brother," he replied simply. That was worse, because now it wasn't just me anymore. I stood up too fast. "Mo, look, I don't want trouble. I didn't mean to get caught. I'll leave." I swear he raised a hand slightly. "I'm not sending you away," he said. "I'm going with you." That stopped me mid-sentence. He started walking toward the gate, expecting me to follow. My legs didn't move at first. Everything in my head screamed that this was wrong, dangerous, too sudden, too unreal. But my brother's face flashed in my mind. ND. Weak, pale, barely speaking last night. So I followed. The SUV doors opened automatically. I hesitated before getting in, still holding one mango in my hand like it was the only thing proving this wasn't a dream. The CEO sat across from me inside, typing something on his phone. His expression stayed unreadable. Outside, the orchard disappeared behind us as the vehicle moved. Minutes passed in silence. Then he spoke again without looking up. "Why didn't you ask for help?" he said. I let out a dry laugh. "From who?" He didn't answer that. Instead, he typed something else, then said, "In my country, there is a saying. If you are hungry, it means someone failed." I frowned slightly. "That sounds unfair." He finally looked at me. "Not unfair," he said, "just responsibility." The car slowed as we entered the poorer streets. The air changed immediately. Dustier. Closer, louder. My house came into view, small, half-broken, leaning slightly like it was tired. I pointed again. The driver stopped. I got out first, unsure if this was real anymore. The CEO followed. For a second, he just stood there, looking at the place. Then, unexpectedly, he walked forward and knew. Sikied on the door himself. I panicked. "No, wait, he's sick." The door creaked open. My brother stood there, barely holding himself up, and everything after that shifted again in a direction I couldn't immediately understand. The moment my brother opened the door, the entire world seemed to pause. He was standing there too weak to properly focus, one hand gripping the frame like it was the only thing keeping him upright. His eyes moved slowly from me to the stranger behind me. The Korean CEO didn't speak immediately. He just looked at my brother, not like a businessman, not like an owner of land, not like someone calculating profit. Just human. Then he stepped forward. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said calmly. My brother blinked, confused. "Who are you?" I rushed in quickly. "He owns the mango orchard. I got caught." That made my brother stiffen immediately. "I'm sorry," he said instinctively, trying to straighten up even though his body clearly couldn't handle it. "If she did something wrong," the CEO raised a hand slightly. "She didn't do anything wrong," he interrupted. That sentence hit both of us harder than expected. My brother looked at me, then back at him, still confused. The CEO turned slightly toward the small house, taking in the cracked walls, the heat trapped inside, the empty water jug near the door. Then he spoke again, slower this time. "How long has he been sick?" he asked me. 4 days, I whispered. "It started as fever, then he stopped eating properly." The CEO nodded once, as if noting data in his mind. Then he did something I didn't expect again. He stepped inside the house. Not waiting, not asking permission again. Just walking in like he already knew what he needed to see. I followed quickly, panic rising. My brother struggled to sit down on the bed. The CEO looked around the small space. No medicine, no proper bedding, barely any food storage. He took off his watch. That simple action confused me. Then he placed it on the small wooden table. "Call a doctor," he said to his driver outside in Korean. The driver immediately moved. My heart started racing. "No, wait, this is too much," I said quickly. "We can't afford any of this." "We didn't ask for." The CEO turned slightly toward me. "You didn't ask," he said. "That's the problem. I didn't know how to respond to that." My brother coughed weakly behind me, and I turned instantly, kneeling beside him. The CEO watched quietly for a moment, then stepped back out of the room, giving space. For a second, I thought he was leaving, but instead, I saw him speaking to someone on his phone again, voice low and sharp, switching between Korean and English. Minutes later, a car pulled up outside, then another, then something even stranger, a medical team. I froze at the doorway. "Why are doctors here?" I whispered. The CEO didn't look at me this time. His eyes were fixed on my brother. "Because mangoes don't matter," he said quietly. "If the people who pick them are dying." The doctors moved quickly inside. Equipment, checks, questions. Everything became noise and motion. I stood frozen outside the room, watching strangers take over my small, broken world like it suddenly mattered to someone powerful. The CEO stepped beside me. "You climbed my fence because you were desperate," he said. I nodded slightly, not trusting my voice. He continued, "But desperation doesn't create crime. It exposes systems." I didn't fully understand what he meant, but something in his tone made me listen. A nurse called from inside, speaking urgently. The CEO responded immediately, translating something, giving instructions, moving between languages like it was natural. After a few minutes, the tension in the room shifted slightly, not fixed, but stabilized. My brother was still weak, but no longer fading in front of my eyes. I felt my knees almost give out from relief. The CEO noticed. "You should sit," he said. I shook my head. "I'm fine." He gave a faint look that said he didn't believe me at all. Then he said something unexpected again. "I was like you once." That made me look at him properly for the first time. "What?" I asked. He leaned against the doorframe, arms folded, gaze distant for a moment. "Not hungry," he clarified. But unseen, the words lingered. He continued. "People think success means you stop noticing suffering, but sometimes it just means you get better at ignoring it." I didn't know what to say to that either. Inside, the doctors adjusted equipment. My brother's breathing sounded steadier. Then one of the doctors came out briefly, speaking to the CEO directly. The CEO listened carefully, then nodded. The doctor went back inside. I watched all of this lie. I was standing outside my own life. After a while, the CEO walked out of the house completely, stepping into the sunlight. I followed him instinctively. "Is he going to be okay?" I asked. He didn't answer immediately. That silence scared me more than anything. Then he said, "He will recover, but he needs proper care." I nodded quickly. "We'll manage somehow." He turned his head slightly toward me. "No," he said simply. "You won't." That statement should have sounded harsh, but it didn't. It sounded like fact. Before I could argue, he added, "I'm taking responsibility for this." I frowned. "Why?" "You don't even know us." He looked back toward the house. "You stole mangoes," he said, "but I think I was the one who was blind." The wind moved through the orchard in the distance, barely visible beyond the road. Then he straightened up and said something that changed everything again. "Come with me to the city." The words hung in the air like they didn't belong to the same world I did. "Come with me to the city." I blinked at him. "The city? Why?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward the house again, where the doctors were still inside with my brother. Then he said, "Because if you stay here, this will happen again." I felt something tighten in my chest. "That's not your decision," I said quietly. "We'll manage." He finally looked at me directly. "And yet you were stealing mangoes to survive," he replied. I had no comeback for that. The silence between us grew heavy until the door opened again and one of the doctors stepped out. "He's stable for now," the doctor said, "but he needs proper treatment and monitoring." My knees almost gave out again, but this time from something closer to exhaustion than fear. The CEO nodded once, as if he had already expected that outcome. Then he turned back to me. "Pack whatever you need," he said. "Only what matters." I hesitated. "I don't have anything." That was the truth. Our entire life fit into a few broken objects and empty spaces. The CEO didn't push further. Instead, he walked back toward the car and spoke briefly to his driver. Within minutes, things started moving again too fast for my mind to keep up. My brother was carefully carried out of the house on a stretcher. I followed, still in shock, watching neighbors peek from doorways like they couldn't believe what they were seeing. One of them whispered, "Who are these people?" I didn't know anymore. The SUV doors opened again. This time, everything felt different. Not like escape, but like being pulled into something larger than me. I sat beside my brother, holding his hand tightly. The CEO sat across from us again, quieter now. Less CEO, more something I couldn't label. As the car started moving, the familiar streets disappeared behind us. Dust turned into pavement. Pavement turned into highways, and the city began to rise in the distance like a different planet. I pressed my forehead against the window. I've never been there, I admitted softly. The CEO glanced up from his phone. Most people from your area haven't, he said. That should have sounded like distance, but it didn't. It sounded like awareness. Hours passed in silence, broken only by the hum of the engine and my brother's steady breathing. At one point, I noticed we weren't heading toward random buildings. We were heading towards something much bigger. Glass towers, security gates, places I had only ever seen in videos. We passed through a controlled entrance where guards immediately recognized the vehicle. Clean stepped aside without question. My stomach tightened again. Where are we? I asked. The CEO finally put his phone down. My company headquarters, he said. That made my heart drop slightly. I turned toward him. Why here? He looked out the window for a moment before answering. Because, he said, this is where decisions are made. The car stopped in front of a building so tall it made me feel small just looking at it. People in suits moved quickly around the entrance. Everything looked too clean, too fast, too controlled. When the doors opened, warm air and silence hit me at the same time. A woman in formal attire approached immediately, speaking in Korean. The CEO responded briefly, then gestured toward us. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw me and my brother. We were clearly not supposed to be here, but no one stopped us. Instead, we were guided inside. Elevators, glass walls, endless floors rising above us. My reflection kept appearing and disappearing in every surface-tired eyes. Messy hair, a girl who had stolen mangoes just yesterday, now standing inside something that didn't feel real. The elevator stopped at a private floor. We stepped out. Into a quiet hallway. The CEO walked ahead, leading us into a large room with a long table, city view stretching behind it like a painting. My brother was taken to an adjoining medical room. I started to follow, but the CEO stopped me gently with a gesture. He's safe, he said. I stayed frozen for a moment, unsure where I was supposed to stand in a place like this. Then he spoke again. You said you had no money for medicine, he said. I nodded slowly. He walked to the window, looking down at the city below. I built this company from nothing, he continued. But I think I forgot what nothing feels like. I didn't understand where this was going. He turned slightly. From today, he said, you are not alone in it anymore. Before I could ask what he meant, the door opened again. A group of executives entered, speaking quickly, papers in hand. The room filled with energy again, decisions, discussions, urgency, and I stood there in the middle of it all, still holding on to the last mango in my pocket, like it was the only thing connecting me to who I used to be. The CEO glanced at it. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled faintly. Not at me, at the situation. Like something. Hing had already shifted in ways no one had fully understood yet. The faint smile on his face didn't last long. The executives were still speaking, papers shifting, voices overlapping in sharp Korean and broken English. The room felt like it was moving at a speed I couldn't match, and I was just standing there, still holding that last mango in my pocket like it belonged to another version of me. The CEO finally raised a hand. The room went quiet instantly. That kind of silence didn't feel normal. It felt trained. He turned slightly toward the executives. Clear my schedule, he said calmly. All of it. One of them looked confused. Sir, the investor meeting, cancel it, he repeated, still calm, but firmer. No one argued after that. They left quickly, leaving only the echo of urgency behind. Then the CAO turned back to me. Sit, he said. I hesitated. I'm fine standing. You've been standing since I met you, he replied. That made me sit, not because I agreed, but because my body was finally too tired to argue. He walked to the table and opened a thin folder. Inside were documents, maps, reports, things I didn't understand fully, but I could tell they weren't C. A Sewell. Then he said something that made my chest tighten. Your village is part of my supply chain. I frowned slightly. Supply chain. He nodded. The orchard you climb belongs to a larger system. Farms, workers, distribution. He paused, and I never looked beyond profit margins. That word profit felt too small for everything I had been through. I looked down at my hands. So what now? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked toward the window again, looking at the endless city below. I started my company to fix inefficiency, he said. To make things faster, better, more productive. Then his voice lowered slightly. But I think I built something that only works if people like you stay invisible. I didn't like how honest that sounded. The door opened again, but this time it wasn't executives. A nurse stepped in quietly. My brother? I asked quickly. She nodded gently. He's resting. Stable. A breath I didn't realize I was holding finally left my chest. I almost stood up immediately, but she added, he will need treatment for several weeks. I sat back down slowly. The CEO watched me carefully, then said, he will receive it here. I looked up sharply. Here? In this building? Yes, he said. I shook my head. That's impossible. We can't afford. He cut me off again, but not harshly. You don't need to afford it. That sentence didn't feel real. It felt like something rich people said in movies, not something that actually applied to someone like me. I laughed once, dry and nervous. Why are you doing this? He looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, because you reminded me what failure looks like when it's not in numbers. That confused me more than anything. Before I could respond, the doors opened again. A young assistant entered, speaking quickly to him in Korean, holding a tablet. He listened, then nodded. After she left, he turned back to me. You will stay here while your brother recovers, he said. I shook my head immediately. I can't just stay in a place like this. I don't belong here. He walked a few steps closer. Neither did I, he said simply. That made me stop. For the first time, I noticed something different in his expression. Not superiority, not control, something closer to memory. He continued, when I first came to this country, I slept in an office room smaller than your kitchen. I blinked. That didn't match anything I had assumed about him. I worked 14 hours a day, he said. Sometimes I didn't eat properly either. He paused. So when I see you hiding mangoes like survival depends on it, I understand more than you think. The room felt quieter after that. Even the city outside the glass seemed distant. I finally spoke again, softer this time. So what changed you? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked to the table and picked up the mango from my pocket. I stiffened slightly, but he didn't take it away. He just held it. This, he said quietly. I frowned. A mango? He gave a small, almost invisible nod. You didn't steal it for yourself, he said. You stole it because you thought no one would care if you disappeared a little more. That sentence hit harder than anything else that day. I looked away. The CEO placed the mango back on the table gently. Then he said something unexpected again. Tomorrow, you will meet my foundation team. I looked up quickly. Foundation? He nodded. A part of my company that should have mattered more than it did. Before I could ask anything else, the nurse returned and motioned for me. Your brother is asking for you. My heart jumped immediately. I stood up so fast my chair almost fell. The CEO didn't stop me this time, but as I moved toward the door, he spoke one last time. Not loud, not commanding, just steady. You are not a mistake, he said. I paused for half a second. Then I walked out. The words stayed with me even after I stepped into the hallway. You are not a mistake. They echoed in my head like they didn't belong to my life, like someone had accidentally placed them there. A nurse guided me down a quieter corridor, away from the glass walls and sharp footsteps of the executive floor. The air changed again, softer, cleaner, almost unreal. Then I saw him, my brother. He was lying in a proper hospital bed now, not the thin mattress from our home. Monitors beeped gently beside him. A clear IV line ran into his arm, but his eyes were open. When he saw me, his lips moved slowly. You came back, he whispered. I rushed to his side immediately, gripping his hand. I'm here, I said quickly. I'm not going anywhere. His fingers squeezed mine weakly. For a moment, nothing else existed. Not the CEO, not the city, not that. The world that had flipped upside down in a single day. Just him breathing, and me finally not afraid he would stop. A nurse adjusted something on the monitor and smiled softly before stepping out. I sat there for a long time, just watching him rest. Then my thoughts crept back. The orchard, the SUV, the CEO, the mango still in his hand like it meant something more than it should. I didn't realize I had been staring at the door until it opened again. He walked in, no suit jacket now, Just a simple white shirt, sleeves rolled. He looked less like a CEO in that moment, and more like someone who had been thinking too much. He stopped a few steps away from the bed. "How is he?" he asked quietly. The nurse answered before I could. "Stable, responding well." He nodded once. Then he looked at my brother, not like a patient file, not like a case, like a person. That still felt strange to me. My brother shifted slightly, noticing him. "Are you the Mango Man?" he asked weakly. I almost laughed despite everything. The CEO blinked once, then unexpectedly he smiled. "Yes," he said, something like that. My brother gave a faint, tired smile back before closing his eyes again. The moment passed, gently. The CEO stepped back and gestured for me to follow him outside. I hesitated but stood up. We walked into a small waiting lounge nearby. It was quieter here, with large windows overlooking the city lights beginning to glow. He stopped near the glass. "I spoke to my foundation team," he said. I crossed my arms nervously. "About what?" "Your village," he replied. "The workers, the orchard system." My stomach tightened slightly. "And?" He turned toward me, and I realized something very simple. He said, "We built efficiency, not fairness." I frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" "It means," he said, "food is leaving farms, while children are still hungry near them." That sentence didn't feel like business talk. It felt like truth someone had avoided for too long. I looked away toward the window. "So what happens now?" He stepped closer to the glass beside me. "Now," he said, "we change how it works." I didn't respond immediately. It sounded too big, too far from my world, too impossible. Then I said quietly, "People don't just change systems like that." He looked at me. "No," he agreed. "They usually don't." A pause. Then he added, "Unless someone shows them what they've been." And ignoring. My throat tightened slightly. I didn't know if I was that someone. I didn't even feel like I had done anything. Just climbed a fence. Just taken mangoes. Just tried not to let my brother go hungry. The CEO reached into his pocket and placed something on the table between us. It was my mango. Still there. I looked at it, confused. "I didn't eat it," he said simply. That felt oddly important, though I couldn't explain why. He continued, "Tomorrow, I want you to come with me." My chest tightened again. "Where?" "To the orchard," he said. I frowned. "Why?" "Because," he replied, "the people who pick the fruit should not be invisible anymore." I looked at him carefully. "You're serious," I said. He nodded once, completely serious. A long silence followed. Outside, the city kept moving like nothing had changed at all. But inside this room, something had already started shifting, even if I didn't understand its shape yet. Morning came too fast. Or maybe it wasn't morning at all, just time moving differently inside glass walls and quiet hospital corridors. I hadn't really slept. I kept checking on my brother every few minutes like he might disappear the moment I stopped laughing. Looking, but he was still there. Breathing. Stable. Real. That alone felt like a miracle I didn't trust yet. When I stepped out of the hospital room, the CEO was already waiting in the hallway. Same calm posture. Same unreadable expression. But something was different. He wasn't surrounded by executives today. No phones buzzing. No assistants rushing. Just him. And a small black car waiting outside. "You're coming with me," he said simply. I hesitated. "I should stay with my brother." "He will be monitored," he replied. "You'll see him after." That didn't fully comfort me, but something in his tone made it sound like it wasn't optional. So I followed. The drive this time didn't feel like escape. It felt like direction. The city slowly disappeared behind us again, replaced by highways, then open land, then familiar dusty roads I recognized too well. My chest tightened as I realized where we were going. The orchard. When the car finally stopped, I saw it clearly. The same fence, the same trees, the same place where everything had started collapsing and changing at the same time. But now it looked different. There were workers outside, not just a few, many. Uniforms, notebooks. It meant people measuring soil, checking water lines, inspecting storage areas. And at the gate, security had been replaced by staff holding clipboards instead of weapons. I stepped out slowly, unsure if I was seeing reality or something staged. The CEO followed behind me. "This is not how it was yesterday," I said quietly. "No," he replied. "It's not." We walked inside. The orchard was still the same in shape, but the feeling had shifted completely. Workers looked up as we passed. Some recognized him and lowered their heads quickly. But then something unusual happened. One of them, an older man with tired hands and dust on his sleeves, did not lower his gaze. He just looked directly at the CEO, then at me, and he asked, "Who is she?" My body froze slightly. I wasn't used to being noticed in places like this. The CEO answered before I could speak. "She's the reason we're here today." That sentence made my stomach tighten. The workers paused. Even the noise of equipment seemed to soften. I immediately shook my head. "No, I didn't do anything like that." The CAO turned slightly toward me. "You did," he said calmly. "You showed what we ignored." Before I could respond, he gestured toward the orchard. "Walk with me." We moved deeper inside. As we walked, I started noticing changes. Not everything was fixed, but everything was being questioned. Water distribution charts, worker schedules, storage logs. People weren't just harvesting anymore. They were documenting conditions, measuring gaps, asking questions that didn't exist before. We stopped near a group of workers gathered around a broken irrigation pipe. One of them explained something quickly in Korean. The CEO responded, then turned to me. "This pipe hasn't worked properly for months," he said. "No one reported it because reporting didn't change anything." I frowned. "Why not fix it earlier?" He looked at the field. "Because systems don't fail suddenly," he said. "They fail quietly, over time, when no one is listening." That line felt heavier than it should have. We kept walking until we reached the fence again, the same one I had climbed. I stopped there. My fingers instinctively touched the broken edge. "I came through here," I said softly. The CEO looked at it too. "You came through it," he corrected. "But many people were already outside before you." I looked at him. He continued, "They just never reached me." That stayed in the air between us. A worker approached, handing him a report. He read it quickly, then signed something. Then he did something unexpected. He handed the pen to me. I stared at it. "What am I supposed to do with that?" I asked. "Sign your name," he said. I frowned. "On what?" He turned the document slightly toward me. It wasn't complicated, but it changed everything. A pilot program, food redistribution, local access system, worker support structure. I looked at him. "I don't understand any of this." "You don't have to understand everything," he said. "Just what you lived." That hit differently. My hand hesitated. Then slowly, I took the pen. And for the first time, I wrote my name somewhere that wasn't survival. When I finished, I looked up. The CEO was watching, not intensely, not calculating, just present. A worker nearby quietly said something in Korean, and a few others nodded. The orchard didn't feel the same anymore, not because it had changed completely, but because something inside it had started to move. The CEO stepped beside me again. "This is only the beginning," he said. I looked at the trees swaying lightly in the wind. "I didn't steal mangoes for tea." "His," I said quietly. He nodded. "No," he agreed. "But maybe that's exactly why it started." The sun was already leaning low when we left the orchard again. This time, I didn't look back the way I had before, because something about it no longer felt like a place I was escaping from or running toward. It felt like something in between, something changing while I was still trying to understand it. The car ride back to the city was quiet. My brother was still in the hospital under care, stable, resting. That thought alone kept my hands from shaking. The CEO sat across from me again, watching the road outside like he always did, like he was thinking in layers I couldn't fully reach. Finally, I spoke. "Why me?" I asked softly. He didn't look surprised by the question. He just answered honestly. "Because you didn't wait for permission to survive," he said. I looked down at my hands. "That doesn't sound like something important," I said. "It is," he replied. "Most systems depend on people waiting." That sentence stayed with me longer than anything else he had said. When we reached the hospital again, the nightlights had taken over the city. My brother was awake when I entered the room. His eyes moved to me immediately. "You're back," he said weakly, but with a small smile this time. I sat beside him quickly, holding his hand. "I told you I'm not going anywhere," I said. He glanced past me, noticing the CEO standing near the door. "Is he still here?" my brother asked quietly. I nodded. The CEO stepped forward slightly. "How do you feel?" he asked. My brother thought for a moment. "Less like I'm disappearing," he said. That made something shift in the room. Even the CEO paused for a fraction of a second, like he hadn't expected that answer. Then he nodded. "That's enough for today," he said quietly. Later that night, after the doctors checked on my brother again and the room finally settled into calm, I found myself standing by the window. The city outside was endless. Lights moving, cars fading into distance. People I would never meet. The CEO stood beside me again. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then he said, "When I first built my company, I thought success was about reaching the top." I listened quietly. "But now," he continued, "I think it's about what you do when you finally see the bottom." I looked at him. He aren't looking at me anymore. He was looking at the city like it was something he had only just started to understand. I asked softly, "What happens to me now?" That made him turn slightly. "You stay involved," he said. "If you choose to?" I frowned a little. "I don't know anything about companies." "You know something more important," he replied. "What?" "Where hunger hides." That answer didn't feel like praise. It felt like responsibility. A long silence followed. Then he reached into his pocket and placed something on the windowsill. A simple card. Not heavy, not dramatic, just a name and access. I didn't pick it up immediately. Instead, I asked the only thing that mattered to me in that moment. "And my brother?" "He will recover," he said. "Completely." That was enough to make my throat tighten. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was holding my breath just to survive. I finally picked up the card. Then I looked out at the city again. It didn't feel smaller, but it didn't feel like it was swallowing me anymore either. The CEO stepped back slightly toward the door. Before leaving, he said one last thing. "You didn't just take Mango," he said. "You opened something I ignored for too long." Then he was gone. The room fell quiet again. My brother shifted in the bed behind me. "Are we okay now?" he asked softly. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I nodded. "I think we are starting to be," I said. Outside, the city kept moving. But for the first time, it didn't feel like it was moving without us anymore.